Attorneys. Uh-oh. Is it ever bad?
Oh, bad.
I'd like to call the Newman City Council regular meeting of May 23rd to order. If you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, God, for bringing us here safely tonight. Please give us the guidance and the wisdom to make the right decisions for our community. In this we pray. Amen. Amen. May we have a roll call, please?
Present.
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 Present. Item number 5, these are communications from the staff. Anything tonight? Nothing? Oh, well, yeah, I was actually going to do it right here. Okay, I'll do it, yeah. Item number 6, these are items from the public. These are non-agenda items. While the City Council welcomes and encourages participation in the meetings, it would be appreciated if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes so that everyone may be heard. Matters under the jurisdiction of the council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public at this time. However, California law prohibits the council from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda, unless it is determined to be an emergency by the City Council. Are there any non-agenda items tonight? Seeing none, we will move to the...
When do we add that item?
I'll add it before I go to public hearing. This one here, I'll add it before I go to public.
Before we start that, okay.
Items from the public. These are agenda items. Any member of the audience desiring to address the council on a matter on the agenda, please raise your hand or step to the podium at the time the item is announced by the mayor. In order that all interested parties have an opportunity to speak, any person addressing the council will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes unless the mayor and the council grants a longer period of time. Before we go to item 7, public hearings, at this time I am going to ask, we had an item that came to our attention yesterday, was it? That we would like to add to the agenda under item 9F, which pertains to a repair on one of our police vehicles, which needs immediate action. So if there is no...
What you just need to do is find that this came to your attention after the agenda was posted and that there's a need to act immediately.
Okay.
And you can do that before you decide to make the expenditure or not.
Okay.
And then
Just briefly for the council's information, if you've had a chance to look at the report, this is one of our police vehicles. If we're going to be down for a while without it, which means we may be doubling up with some officers on vehicles. We're going to end up having to get it fixed one way or the other. That's the reason we're bringing to it, just to expedite it and be able to get the repair going. So,
and with that you could make those findings.
Okay. Do we need a motion?
Yeah.
With that, can we have a motion to add this as 9F?
I move that we add authorize the repair expenditure for 1995 Ford Patrol Unit as 9F.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with 1 absent. Item 7A, these are public hearings. 7A is an ordinance number 2000, next to number, an ordinance amending various sections of the Newman Municipal Code, Zoning Code with respect to signs, outdoor sales, and garden structures. This is a public hearing, second reading, and adoption. Cleve?
just quickly, you introduced this ordinance at your last meeting. As it mentions here, it's relating to signs, outdoor sales, and garden structures. It was introduced and explained at that meeting. We are now holding the public hearing at this meeting, and it is scheduled for adoption.
Being that this is a public hearing, I will open up the public hearing for comment. Seeing no public comment, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council for direction.
Any questions?
I so move that we adopt ordinance number 2000, next number, an ordinance amending various sections of the Newman Municipal Zoning Code with respect to signs, outdoor sales, and garden structures.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with 1 absent. Thank you. Item 7B, this is also a public hearing. This is resolution number 2000, next to number, a resolution declaring the existence of a public nuisance under ordinance number 95-4. Ernie, we have a memo tonight?
Yes, good evening. This is a code enforcement issue. It's stated in the city manager's report. Numerous letters were sent out to properties regarding the maintenance that was needed. Most of the people who received the letters complied, with the exception of 6 property owners, on which memo I handed to you prior to the start of the meeting. Staff recommendation is that you declare this list a public nuisance and direct abatement of same.
Are there any questions for Ernie? Being that this is a public hearing, I will open up the public hearing. If there are any comments, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council for direction.
Move adoption of resolution number 2000, next number, declaring the existence of a public nuisance under ordinance number 95-4.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with 1 absent. Thank you, Ernie. Item 8, this is a consent calendar. We have item 8A, this approval of the warrants. Item 8B, approval of minutes of the May 9th, 2000 regular meeting. C, resolution number 2000, next number, declaring certain personal property surplus property. D, adopt resolution number 2000, next to number, resolution authorizing Stanislaus County Department of Environmental Resources to apply for and administer a beverage container recycling grant on behalf of the city of Newman. Are there any questions on any of those? Seeing none, can we have some direction?
I move that we approve the consent calendar A, B, C, and D.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Item 9, this is a regular business. 9A, this is to authorize use of city parking lot by the West Side Theater for celebration on July 29th, 2000. Cleve?
This is hopefully a simple one. I know that Ferris Larson has spoken to the police chief, I believe, about their events and what they have planned, and no real concerns on it. They're basically asking to close Main Street in the block where the theater is, and also to close off the city parking lot to make use of that. We will work with them as far as parking, especially if we expect a big turnout, as we may. There's a possibility of being able to use our new property that we've now purchased, the Damari property, directly behind the parking lot, and arrange something to assist with parking if need be for that event. But the recommendation is that, as you've seen here, for them to provide the insurance that they have. I'm assuming that won't be a problem for them, and that they be responsible for helping with the cleanup around there and et cetera. So other than that, it's just approved this for I think it's going to be a good event. They've got some good things planned.
They're also allowing other community organizations to be able to participate by selling food and beer and other things like that, so they can make money for their own clubs.
Great. And this will be an all-day event?
No, it's just the evening.
Just the evening.
And this will be the actual lighting of the marquee when it'll officially be lit up. So it'll just be, I don't know,
6 p.m., isn't it?
7:30 to 10 or something like that. Or
I thought
Some
it was
of
6.
businesses would be closed?
it may be, but approximately just the evening hours, 3 or 4 hours in the evening, I imagine.
It's going to be lit around 9:30 approximately.
Okay.
Okay.
Should be a fun thing.
It sounds like it. It's going to be quite an event.
I so move that we authorize use of city parking lot by West Side Theater for celebration on July 29, 2000.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with 1 absent. Thank you, Cleve. Item 9B, this is to introduce ordinance number 2000, next to number, adopting park rules and regulations for the city of Newman. Cleve?
This item came to our attention basically as a result of the letter which you have in your packet from Lisa Wagner regarding, I don't know if they've been real severe problems, but there have been instances of youth in the park after dark. And what happened is we discovered that the sign at the park says that it closes at dusk. We're specifically speaking of Barrington, but the sign says it closes at dusk. Our ordinance says it closes at 10, so we've got a problem there. So I looked at it and started reviewing some things, and most cities have an ordinance similar to the one that we're recommending here, which addresses all park rules, and there's simply one for all of your parks. You can refer to this code of your section of your municipal code that addresses all of the rules, and it's a simple thing. It's all in one place to see what your rules and regulations are for your parks. Ours, what I found is we have some of these rules are in place, but they're scattered throughout our muni code currently in different areas depending on what the topic is. So my recommendation, and I've taken this to our Parks and Recreation Commission, was to adopt an ordinance which addresses each of these rules. Now, a couple of things that I recommended, specifically this letter was recommending that we change the time to dusk or something around possibly an hour after dusk and an hour before dawn as the times that the park opens and closes. At the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, this person was not at the meeting. There was no one to represent the Barrington area. We had sent a copy of the agenda to her, and we did send a copy of the agenda to her for this meeting also, but I don't believe anyone is here tonight to represent them. But the Parks and Recreation Commission finally decided that they didn't feel there was a problem leaving it open until 10. So their recommendation on that item was to leave it open until 10, which means we would change what it says on the sign. It does give the police something to enforce, but they wouldn't be able to enforce anything until 10 o'clock at night, which means if there are kids, especially during the time of year in the winter, when it gets dark, say at 5 o'clock, that means, you know, between 5 and 10, there can be anyone out in the park, and they cannot enforce that. So that was where some of the concern was basically having people in the park when there's not any activity, there's no lights in the park, having people out there. And the Parks and Recreation Commission felt that, you know, are they really causing a problem, or are they just out there in the park? Is it really a problem? And their opinion was to leave it the way it is and proceed forward there. Mayor, you were there at the meeting, I believe, too. If there's anything you want to add on this topic, you can. The second item was relating to the use of alcohol in the park, and I had looked at some things, and I thought that we currently allowed it, and so I portrayed that to the Parks and Recreation Commission, and they said, well, let's just not change anything, let's just leave it the way it is in relation to that. However, later I found that there's another section in the municipal code which actually says that we do not allow alcohol in our parks except by permit. So I haven't had a chance to go back to the Parks and Recreation Commission. It's my opinion that their feeling was to leave it the way that it currently is, which would mean alcohol is not allowed in the park, only by permit. But I can't say for sure that that's what they wanted. But so that's the way I'm bringing this recommendation to you. The other rules that are established here, the commission all agreed with and wanted to leave in there. I don't think there are any that are much different than what we currently have. The couple of items that may seem a little bit different to you that we decided to leave in there right now are items Y and Z, which relate to storm drain basins, which are serve as park playgrounds also, with park-like improvements in them. We currently do not have those. However, we have some plans for the future to possibly put those in. The Sherman Ranch Park is planned that way, and so we thought let's just leave those in, and then when we do establish them, that procedure is in place for those. Some of the other things that may come back to us as we put these rules in place is W, you see, is playing golf in parks, hitting golf balls in parks. We know that we have some of that currently, but there is a real danger in allowing that. So the commission felt that that was okay, that they wanted to not allow that in the park. That's pretty much it. The rest of these I think are pretty common sense ones that most cities have. Unless you have questions about any of these, I'll be happy to try and answer them for you.
Steve, I just had one question. As far as security lights, do we have any security lights out there presently?
Only around the tennis court and the play court and the snack bar area. There's some lights that stay on all night around that area, but none out behind there out in the park. I don't believe. Are there any? Or Mike? None back behind, right? So.
Because I know that the Densmore Park does have some
Yeah, Densmore has the streetlights around the
Well,
outside.
then it also has the light in back of the library too.
Right, on the parking lot there, yeah, yeah.
That
And this
pretty
one
much
has it, like I say, around, all around the play court and there, and of course there's street lights down the street. And I believe back in the court on the, would be the northwest side, there's a street light back there where that street dead ends. But other than that, they all back up to houses, and therefore, that's why it's a little bit different than Densmore. They back up, the park backs up to houses, and therefore there are no street lights that cover that area, and it can be pretty dark back in the southwest corner and back in that area.
But the main park is surrounded by lights, street lights.
Correct. Pioneer
That-
Park, yeah.
That's the only question I had.
Are there any other questions with regards to this ordinance?
I had a couple of questions. I guess since there was no representative at either of the meetings, we don't know, she mentions in her letter that they've had many problems with young kids. Did they give any detail? What kind of problems? Are we talking about noise or
Mike, could you
vandalism,
address
or-
that? Because you've talked to them, I believe, quite a bit, haven't you? Could you address that for us?
Well, she also mentioned that we, the residents, and there's only one signature.
Mhm.
Right.
So
I believe she
there's only
did
one
let
person.
Mike know that they could get more signatures. And Mike, I believe you've been out to a meeting of some of the residents out
Right,
there.
I met with about 10 of the residents that are living in and on that block area on Barrington there, that's across from the park. Some of the concerns that they have is basically that that there's damage going on to the park. We have taken a lot of reports as far as vandalism and graffiti and other things of that nature that the Public Works Department's had to repair. We've also had that snack shack been burglarized and other things of that nature. But some of their complaints were just the noise that the kids are after hours. Parking's one of the issues, and just that there's things going on at that park. They felt there's negative activity going on at that park after hours because there's no lights, there's no reason for the kids really to be out there. So that was some.
Have we been successful in catching any of these people responsible for the vandalism?
No, we have not.
And I imagine the vandalism may take place whether the park's open or closed, or the lights are on or off. I mean, it's just probably happening a lot later than 10 p.m.
Right. Well, that plus the one thing, the nice thing about what this ordinance would also work too is it would be able to identify, give us the authority to go out and start identifying some of these kids, and actually have a reason to detain them at this point, get names, and then gives us a good investigative tool when we have to go back when there's vandalism there. Either they are witnesses or they're suspects. So.
But there have been complaints of things like boom boxes or anything.
Yes,
out
they do.
there.
They do have that. They have cars that kind of park out in the area there, or use that park after hours. Some of the times they can't see what's going on in that park, but they hear a lot of noise and things, teenagers and things hanging out in that park.
And I imagine with a lot of Bay Area commuters, they probably retire early in the evening, and if it happens on weeknights, especially in the summertime, it can be irritating.
As far as the curfew's 10 o'clock, so if they're out there at 10, they're violating the curfew. I know we're
Citywide curfew, yes.
right.
Yes.
It's 10 o'clock, so if it's they should be on their way out, obviously a little bit before 10 o'clock. Do we do a normal? And this is one of the things that came up at the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. Do we normally do the rounds as far as the parks when it gets close to that curfew time?
Which, yeah, we that's one of the things that we do as the department is just checking and see what's going on in our parks.
Right. Okay.
So it's probably between 10 and 11
Especially
o'clock.
during that when it gets close to the curfew time. I mean, if you've got a bunch of kids out there at 9:30, 9:45, I suspect that we should probably let them know that it's getting to that time to be in where they ought to be home. I'm not sure if that's
Well,
what-
it's the park areas, and there's several areas that I think the police can probably identify where they know youth are hanging out that around that 10 o'clock hour, that they can find them and say, it's curfew, 10 o'clock, it's time to be in. The parks are probably just one of several areas, I would imagine.
I'm more inclined to agree with what the staff was saying, is that like during the winter months it gets dark at 5, and they shouldn't be in the park when it's dark. That's my feeling. But I wanted to ask you, what would be the police deal? Say all the other parks stay closed 1 hour after dusk, except Pioneer. Now, do you have problems up until 10 o'clock with Pioneer since it's well lit and everything?
It's well lit. I'd just like to keep the standard pretty much the same for every park, if we're going to do that.
Yeah, the way this is currently written, you know, it would apply to every park.
Every park.
Not just Barrington. Even though Barrington is the one that was asked to be addressed, the way this is written would apply to all parks in the city. So.
But if you did it, say, an hour after dusk, and then you're keeping people that like to take walks downtown and everything from going, you know, walking through the park.
When do a lot of these problems, do we have any idea in terms of the vandalism or a lot of these complaints with the noise and everything else? What time are we talking about?
Well, can I just quickly address Tom's question? It does say to remain or loiter in the park after that hour. So if they're just walking through the park, in my mind, they're okay. Would you interpret that way, Chief?
Yes.
Because it does say remain or loiter. So if they're taking their dog for a walk in the park after dark, and this was addressed at the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting also, if somebody's on that back side and wants to walk across over to Barrington, walking their dog or whatever, that is okay. The key is if they're in there playing or staying in the park, that is the time when they would be in violation of it. So if you want to go for a walk through the park,
Right.
that's okay.
You'd have to refresh my memory. Does this have a clause in there where if it's a council-sponsored event that, like our fall festival, that would be an exemption for that? Because we do have the
Right.
carnival and things going
I'm
on.
trying to remember, Judy, where we included that in? Did we do that? We meant to leave that in to allow for by
Special
permit
events.
to allow that in. That's in the current ordinance, and so that's probably an area that we need to amend to allow that. That was the intention.
Okay.
Because, go ahead.
One of the things, and maybe I missed it here, in terms of with this chapter 11 here with regards to conduct in city parks, I guess the only thing I'm concerned about is our curfew's 10 o'clock. I mean, it's been the curfew for a long time. You know, we start telling people, okay, kids, okay, primarily, you're out of the park after dusk. They're still gonna go someplace else. I mean, if they're causing trouble, you know, in the park, and we say, okay, well, it's dusk, now you gotta go, but the curfew's still 10 o'clock, I mean, what's to stop them from going someplace else and vandalizing someplace else or graffitiing or congregating or something?
Well, for the most part, I can tell you that the hours that we're talking about that you're concerned about, during the summer months, the days are so long, you're almost talking 9 o'clock before it gets dark. And so if you had an hour after dusk, you're almost at the curfew time anyway. What we're really kind of, I think, addressing it would be the times like the winter months where the days are very much short, when
Right.
you're talking when it starts getting dark about 5 o'clock.
But
People
even-
aren't out in the park that much because basically you've got cold and other things that kind of drive them to the inside. So if they're really out there...
But what my point is, what we're trying to get at here with this letter is with regards to, you know, basically what I've heard on this is that we've had, well, I'm going to read straight from here, is we've had many problems with young kids, and the park's open way too late. But even during the winter months, is the curfew still going to be 10 o'clock?
It's still gonna be 10 o'clock.
Is my point. So maybe they're going to not be in the park causing trouble, but they're going to be somewhere else causing trouble. And so maybe the person that doesn't live across the street from the park, maybe they're not going to complain, but I guarantee you wherever the kid that causes kids that cause trouble, wherever they go elsewhere in the town, I guarantee you we're going to get letters from the people that live across the street from there. So, I think to adopt these times on parks is not even addressing the real issue. I really don't. I just think if you're,
Okay.
I think if there's problems with these kids, then there's got to be some way that, we need to address that issue.
Excuse me, are you saying that we shouldn't have times for the park to be open?
No, what I'm saying is, all I'm saying is that we're trying to address this letter here as far as these problems with these young kids. And I'm reading straight from this letter here. All I'm saying is if we close the parks at an hour after dusk or whatever, these problems aren't going to go away, is what my point is.
We'd all agree with that.
So,
Yeah.
But maybe sometimes it's better to have the problem someplace else where they aren't in dark and they can watch them better than they can in a dark park where nobody can see them.
I guess basically our problem at this point is we have confusion. We have a sign that gives the neighborhood and the people who use the park one indication when the park closed. Then we actually have how it's codified in the book at another time. Problem is, they see the officers going over there, they're reading the sign saying the park closes, why aren't the officers doing something? And the officers can't do something at that point because
The code's different.
the code is different.
Mhm. Is this Barrington the only park that's posted at dusk?
I believe
Dinsmore's
so.
not
I think
posted.
Dinsmore is also,
Is it?
I believe so.
I don't think
You
there's,
think so?
I don't think
I don't believe there's
Okay.
any signs at Densmore, are there?
No.
No signs? Okay.
So Barrington is probably the only one. I think these signs
Okay.
went up when it was built
Okay.
originally, so.
And probably because it backs up to a residential neighborhood that they wanted to put that in place.
Yeah.
But I understand what Charles is getting at is, you know, we're addressing this issue, but the root problem is that the kids need something to do. We need to
Yeah, I
have,
agree.
we need to have some activities for these kids to do, so they're not having to hang out in the park after dark, you know. But that's another issue, another time. But yeah, this isn't, the root problem is not that the park is open or closed. It's that, you know, kids tend to congregate together, and,
Mhm.
you know, we need to find some things for them to do. Okay.
So what you're asking, so you're basically.
I'm asking for your recommendation.
I'm of the opinion it should be standardized for all parks. That-
Yeah.
I agree with that, and we would like to get, you know, that we, one way or the other, we will, based on what happens tonight, we will change the sign at Barrington, or leave it the same if that's decided, but we'll get it so that sign is consistent with our ordinance so that it can be enforced.
And
It's
if we
just a
do
matter
that
of what you
though,
want to do.
regardless of what we do tonight, we need to have signs that are, you know, as Mike was mentioning, that we need to have some standards. So if we're gonna have whatever the time is in this park, then it's gotta be
The same.
in all the other parks, because, you know, if, if that's the case, then basically, again, we're just gonna have to move the kids from one park, and, you know, if the signs don't say a particular thing, then they're just gonna say, well, the sign's not up over at Densmore or anyplace else, so, you know, we'll just go there, basically. But, anyway, so what's the council's feeling as far as what the signs should say? Should it say after dusk, an hour, two, whatever? Or do we continue to follow the curfew? How do we want to go forward on this?
Well, just to throw something out and see what people think of it, during the standard time, have it, you know, like 2 hours after dusk, and daylight saving time 1 hour after dusk.
Do we have to post those, though?
So, does that bother?
I'm just wondering, I mean, do we have to, during winter time, we have one sign up, and then during,
Well, you can put it all
Summer.
on one sign.
no, I'm just,
We could do that. It gets, I think my police chief would tell me he would have a real concern with that. It makes it, even, he was objecting, basically, he would like to have it a set hour, because that's very easy for the officer to say, okay, it's 7 o'clock, I can now go in and enforce it. The dawn and dusk are a moving target that we have to live with, but we can do that.
it just seems to me that what we're asking the police department to do would be, okay, at this particular time, they go out and about and they kick the kids out of the park that are congregating. Then when it gets before curfew time, they kick the rest of the kids that have moved someplace else and send them home. I would rather have our police department just make the rounds once in terms of, you know, having the, you know, just doing the sweep, and, you know, if it gets close to that curfew time, then, you know, send them on their way.
And then during the winter, they'll be in the park for 5 hours in the dark.
Well, I think I kind of agree with what the chief said, though, that usually, I mean, wintertime, it's pouring down rain or it's cold, and they're probably going to be in somebody's house more than they're going to be out in the park. Or they're going to be in a car or,
Yeah,
or something. But
You won't find, no.
The only thing that I would ask the chief, and I know he's been very good about it, but you know, and this is one of the things that was brought up at the Parks and Recreation Commission. Can we at least, and see how this works? You know, this isn't set in stone. Obviously, it wasn't. I mean, it's come back to us this time. But, you know, can the chief make sure that every night on these rounds, that when it gets close to this curfew time, that we aggressively enforce the curfew ordinance? Because, I mean, I myself have seen, you know, gosh, I mean, I see more of the kids downtown, you know, after the 10 o'clock hour, you know, more so than, you know, when I'm driving past parks, you know, and, you know, there's, you know, our fire chief would, you know, certainly agree with that. But if we couldn't just aggressively enforce that curfew ordinance, and if there are these kids that are under 18 that ought to be home at that hour, and I'm looking at this back page here with regards to the penalty. And the penalty is, and let me read it for those who are watching at home, every violation of this chapter is deemed an infraction and not a misdemeanor. It is punishable by a fine not exceeding $100 for a first violation, a fine not exceeding $200 for a second violation of the same provisions within 1 year, and a fine not exceeding $500 for each additional violation of the same provisions within 1 year. It just seems to me that if we start aggressively enforcing this ordinance and it starts costing people money, then, you know, it seems like people may be a little more conscious of the fact that they need to obey the law.
Then it sounds like what everybody's saying is 10 o'clock. Because if you put after dusk, 1 hour after dusk, when's dusk? Then you're going to get a lot of people, when's dusk? Well, the different people, dusk is at different times.
Right. So,
I mean, that's confusing.
is that something
So
we
just
could,
10 o'clock?
is that something, Chief, that you could, you know, at this point, we're going to adopt this, we're going to take care of this ordinance here. Is that something that you can make sure that is aggressively enforced, is this curfew ordinance, and making sure that, you know, when it gets close to that 10 o'clock time, that your officers are out making sure that these kids are where they ought to be. They ought to be at home. And let them know what the penalty is. I mean, I think more than anything else, we need to be clear about what the penalty is about these fines. And as I said, when it starts costing people money, then maybe people start taking a little bit more notice that we're serious about these penalties. I don't know.
We'll work on that.
Yeah, I would like to go for the 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And also, one of the things I'd like to say is that, you know, Mike, would it be possible, you know, we're talking about this sweep at 10 o'clock, you know, that may be important, but I think that throughout the whole day, and there's activities going on, we can't say at 10 o'clock we're going to go by the park and then take a look-see, but I'm saying there's other times that there's activities go on and they should be monitored. And maybe some of these things could be prevented, you know, that where the residents have complained, you know, because if they're doing things out there they shouldn't be doing, I don't care if it's before 10 o'clock, they shouldn't be doing them. And they shouldn't be allowed to do them. And I'm sure that the boom box is a good example. There are laws that prevent people from having radios that loud, and we should enforce them so those people don't have to live with those noises. Anyway, that's my comments.
I guess I'd like to check on that. Is there a law, say in the middle of the afternoon somebody's practicing, I don't know, they formed a band, and it happens to be a real loud band, and people report it. Do we have the ability to go and ask them to stop?
Yes.
In the middle of the day?
Mhm.
There is a noise ordinance then that would cover that.
Yes, our street had that problem from a street behind us. And the police came out
I
many
remember
times.
that, and it was several days in a row, and, yeah.
At least what we want to know is try and get the whole neighborhood. We have to go to court. The problem we have is that the judges seem to look at that as a neighbor dispute instead of a neighborhood problem.
Mm.
And so we try and get more residents involved so we can dispel that kind of a problem and actually get to the root of the problem, which is either the band or the boombox or whatever is continuing noise. On a one-time basis, it has to be more of a continual thing. be able to make that, to alleviate those kind of problems.
But you can at least go out the first time and ask them to stop.
Okay.
Yeah, I can test
Well,
with
that's
that.
only one part.
Good.
What was the other part?
Thank you.
In regards to the alcohol, did you want?
Yeah, do you need me to, does everyone understand the issue on the alcohol?
So
Oh, yeah.
this one here
Leave it
is
the way it
10,
is.
10 o'clock, we're,
10 o'clock?
okay. Okay.
And that's the way the ordinance is written. We will, I would ask that we put in that amendment, though, to allow it by permit, groups to be in the park by permit after
Definitely.
later hours for, like, you know, sponsored activities, or, you know, if it, whatever it may be, there may be circumstances where they want to be in later than.
Well, if it's family barbecues and things like that where they reserve the park, they get a permit.
Right,
Right, okay.
right.
Okay.
The issue on the alcohol, what, are we leaving it as written in here, that it's not allowed in the park, only under permit? Is
I
that?
agree with that.
Only by
Absolutely.
permit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
One question is, violation of this chapter, would it be the same as violation of curfew? In other words, would they both be considered the same type of infraction? Same level of, you know, we talked
Is-
about not to exceed $100 for the first violation. Is it same thing for
Do-
curfew violation?
Well, it's part of the same ordinance, right? So it would be,
Well, no, it's not, because
No.
our curfew ordinance is separate,
Oh.
and I don't know what the penalty is for that, do you?
It is an infraction, but juveniles, you cannot take money from juveniles. So basically,
So
it
it's
goes to
not
probation,
part of this?
and probation has a menu that they draw
says
from.
no, it's in this
That's
ordinance, it's not part of the same.
work program, things of that nature, where they assess those.
I thought it was subject to the same
with dollar
penalty
amount.
because it's in the same.
They do assess the
Oh,
parents
maybe
if
it's in,
there's,
oh, it's in a different.
if they cannot
Okay.
partake in those kind of.
So likewise, violation of this chapter, if it were a minor, would not result in a fine, $100
No.
fine. It wouldn't be a fine against the
It would go to
parents.
the probation department, and they would deem that as where appropriate.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other ones on that, Cleve?
No, like I say, the only thing is, this will be, if, in your motion to adopt, introduce the ordinance as amended with the section to allow, being in the park after those hours by permit.
All right, if there are no other questions, can we have some direction, please?
I move that we adopt ordinance number 00, next number, adopting park rules and regulations for the city of Newman with the amendment that individuals be allowed in the park after the closing hour of 10 p.m. with a permit from the city.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Cleve. And I also want to thank the Parks and Recreation Commission for working very hard on this. Item 9C, adopt resolution number 2000, next to number, amending the personnel rules for the City of Newman relating to computer use and discriminatory harassment. Cleve?
These two policies, as you recall, we adopted our personnel rules and regulations last August, and these are two policies that not intentionally were left out, and they are in there in some form, but not as complete as they should be. And these would simply make it more clear of what we're doing. So what we're asking is to adopt the resolution, which will add these ordinances to our personnel rules and regulations.
Are there any questions for Cleve?
Yeah, I have a question. Section 1405, software. The city of Newman, employees must obtain department head approval before installing any personal software on city computers. What kind of personal software would be allowed on a city computer?
Well, it could be something as simple as a, let's say, a screensaver.
Okay, not like address books and their finances and all this kind of stuff?
No,
Okay.
that, we wouldn't do things, no, we wouldn't do things like that. But there may be circumstances where an employee has a program that may assist them in doing their work, and we haven't provided, it's just something they prefer to do, and for some certain job, they prefer to use that program. And so, you know, with their request, and as long as we review it and it works for them, we may allow them to do
Okay,
that.
I just wanted to clear that part
So,
up.
yeah.
Question I have on that, you know, that it's possible to check a program for viruses?
For virus, yeah.
Yeah, because that's one of the things they should do before they allow anybody to, you know, bring their own disk.
The city should already have that program.
Well, sure they do, yeah. But I'm just saying, if they bring a disc in, what they should do is have an individual that's designated as a person to evaluate that disc to make sure that there's no viruses on it.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Cleve? Can we have some direction on this item, please?
I move approval of adoption of Resolution 00, next number, amending the personnel rules for the City of Newman relating to computer use and discriminatory harassment.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with one absent. Thank you, Cleve. Item D, this is to appoint member to the Parks and Recreation Commission. Cleve?
We still have not received any applications. We did, however, as you recall, receive an application earlier, and I haven't, actually, Mayor, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this, but we had talked about possibly appointing this person, Sharon Francisconi. You have her application. She applied last July when there was a vacancy, and Carmen Darcy was appointed to the position at that time. So we put this on the agenda for consideration. And Mayor, I don't know if you want, how you
Sure.
want to proceed with this.
I talked to Sharon last week regarding this and asked her if she was interested again in applying for the Parks and Recreation Commission. She indicated that she was. Unfortunately, I'd spoken with her the other day, and her son plays baseball, so she's at baseball games. In addition, I believe tonight. But I've known Sharon for quite a while. She's been involved, as her application says here. She's been involved with the baseball program for a long time. She was the president of the Little League Board. She has served, in various sporting capacity in the different sports. She's served in various capacities, and she's very familiar with the different recreation programs. And again, unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it here tonight, but she has indicated that she would be interested in serving on the Parks and Recreation Commission. Does anybody have any comments?
No,
Any
I
comments?
remember the interview with her, and I would not be opposed to the nomination. I mean, the appointment, excuse me.
Tom, did you have any questions?
No questions at all.
Sheila?
And there wouldn't be any problem with attending the meetings?
No.
No conflicts?
No.
Well,
Okay.
then I would move that we appoint Sharon Francisconi to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with one absent to appoint Sharon Francisconi to the Parks and Recreation Commission. The term, which began on January 2000, will expire in January 2004. All right? And I want to thank Sharon for applying to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
I'm sorry I abused the name. I'm not Italian.
Item 9E, this is to authorize the city manager and police chief to sign the COPS in School grant for a school resource officer. Mike?
Good evening. This grant may be familiar to you. We put in this grant just about a year ago. But I was just received word as of April 20th that we were rejected for that particular funding cycle, but encouraged to apply again. That's why I'm here tonight. We're looking for a school resource officer. It's pretty much under the same terms and conditions that we had last time. It's called COPS in Schools. It's offered by the U.S. Department of Justice. It pays a maximum of $125,000, which would give us almost about 2.5 years, almost 3 years of funding for an officer's salary over a 3-year period of time. And this almost pays for just about 3 years of salary and benefits for an entry-level officer, and that's one of the requirements that it has to be for an entry-level officer. We're looking at forming a partnership with the school as we did last time. We're also, in our letter of rejection that we got, was basically they told us areas that we need to, or that I need to tighten up. One is our area of retention. There has to be a retention plan. That means how we're going to fund this officer or retain this officer after the funding is in place. in looking at this, one of the things that I was in error on is basically last year they had it where we had to, the requirement was that we had to maintain the officer level at, that would bring us up to 12, and we would never be able to go underneath that if we accepted this funding. They've changed that now to where we have to retain the officer for an additional year, but the amount of officers that we keep on the street, it's not tied to that anymore. Our retention plan last year was basically had a may, which is not a very binding word. They're looking for a word of, or something more binding as a shall, plus a memorandum of understanding with the school district stating exactly what our goals are going to be for this grant. Some of the things that we're kind of looking at is for this officer to be doing is a reduction in violence on school campuses, truancy, which is one of our biggest offenses at this point, a reduction of drugs on campuses, or drugs education such as DARE, which we currently do in the 6th grade, and that could be expanded out to 4th and also something in the high school level. We're also looking at a reduction either gang activity or gang formation on campuses or throughout our community, basically. And that's just to name just a few of the things that we hope to achieve with this officer being actually not a school resource officer. I'm looking at this being a school district officer, being able to service all the campuses within the school district. The reason I'm bringing it to your attention at this point is basically the grant has to be submitted by the 16th, has to be in their hands on the 16th. Our next council meeting is on the 13th, so the time would be very short for us to be able to get that within that time limit. So look, basically what I'm looking for at this point is to see if we want to proceed with this grant, and I would need your authorization to be able to authorize the city manager and myself to enter into an agreement with an MOU with the school district, and also the signing of the grant for the submission.
I have a question.
Yes.
Budget impact, 55,000 and 60,000 annually. Is that after the 3-year period, or does that start when you get the officer right away?
That would be after. That would be after the
3-year period.
Yes.
And then half of that would be paid for by the school.
Yes.
Okay.
What they were trying to say, that's what the cost will be, but we will have funding for that.
Funding for that.
To pay those amounts
Right.
in the first 2 years and part of the 3rd year.
But our budget impact will probably be around 30,000, right? Because the school will pay half of it.
After
Yeah.
this money runs
Right,
out,
right,
it will,
okay, right,
yeah.
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
And the thing about it, just to point out in here, is the fact that with regards to the, that we can't go below we can't fall under the level of 12 officers at any time in the future. But at this point, with our growth that we're going to incur the next few years, we're going to need more staffing anyway.
Basically, there's been a change. That was how it was worded on the last grant. They have now changed that wording that we have to keep the officer an additional year.
Oh.
So there'd be it's actually just a 4-year cycle, and it doesnn't pertain to the officer levels after that, which is, I think, a better use of this grant for us at this point.
Well, we just approved 5 new subdivisions, so we're going to need more help anyway. And then every high school I drive by, whether it's in Modesto, Merced, or wherever it is, there's always a police car out front with an officer inside, which I think is a good thing.
Well, if I had that many officers.
No,
we would
no,
have
but
them
what
in school.
I'm trying to say
Right.
is, I agree with this, that
Mhm.
we're just falling in line with all the other schools and what they're doing.
I think this is basically one of the goals that the police department has always tried to achieve, is basically have interaction with the school community. I think the school, they're a big portion of our community, and I look at our community being threefold. That's just our basic community of residents, our business community, and then the school community. And this is one area that I think we could really expand upon, and this would give us the opportunity to be able to focus on that area quite exclusively.
I wondered whether the 55 and 60 includes any cost of benefits. Is that included
That's
in
also
there?
included.
And the other question I had was, is there any special training that's required for this officer? Would they provide special training, or is it just included in whatever training a new officer receives?
No, actually there is. There's special training. Part of it's already kind of being done in a way with the DARE program. They are having teaching skills. But some of the other, they have a specific curriculum for school resource officers. It's covered by POST, which is the Peace Officer Standard Training, and that pays about 75% of the officer's salary. It's already in place for all our officer training, so that's something that is in place. It's about 2 weeks of training at this point, 80 hours.
Mhm. And I agree with Councilman Applegate that, you know, I truly hope that we receive the grant, but if we don't, maybe we still need to consider trying to fund this kind of thing, because I think it will be a big help to the community and the schools.
It is. I tell you, it's kind of like you can either pay me now or pay me later type situations, the way I kind of look at it. So I think if we have the interaction now with the kids, and that we are able to if we have that interaction now, I think in the future we'd be able to have more positive interactions with them. So I think it's a very good thing.
Well, yeah, it shows the kids that we care about them.
Correct. And it also gives us opportunities for diversion programs and other resources other than just having to take the heavy hand and taking them to either probation or things of that nature. We'd have a handle for conflict resolution right on campus. So.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Can we have some direction on this?
I so move that we authorize the city manager and the police chief to sign Cops in School grant for a school resource officer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with 1 absent. Thank you again, Chief. Item number 10, these are items from the city manager.
Oh, do we have to, this item that we
Oh,
added?
I'm sorry. Wow, it slipped right past me. 9F, this authorized repair expenditure for 1995 Ford Patrol Unit. Chief?
Well, unfortunately, I'm before you again asking for money. I was informed late Monday, the 22nd, that our 1995 Ford Patrol Unit had a transmission going out. We are hoping that that this could be was able to be taken up tonight, because our next council meeting is until June 13th. The cost of repair exceeds what I currently have in my budget for repairing it, and we're looking at an estimate, according to Patch, it's estimated $1,800 to repair this car. But this car does have a Blue Book value of about $7,500 to $10,000. That would be with a good transmission. And the car currently has 84,500 miles on it, has a new front end, and the motor is in good condition according to Patchett's. This car is scheduled to go offline off of patrol with the anticipated purchase of a new patrolling car. And when this car goes offline, it would go to our normal cycle. At this point, it would go to our detective, and that would be replacing a 1991 car that has 120,000 miles on that car. So it'll still have, I think it has plenty of life left in it, and I think it would be worthwhile to repair the car. But some of the options that we're looking at this point is that we repair the car, or we can wait until the next budget, which would be July 1st, to repair the car, or we do not repair the car, but the car cannot be sold because it cannot be smogged, so we have to end up giving it away. And I think a value of $7,500, even at the low end, it would be too much to be giving away at this point. So again, that is my opinion, and I just wanted to make you aware of it and see which direction you'd like to go with this vehicle.
Are there any questions for the chief? I don't think there's any questions. I think we all realize that this is a necessity, and I don't think there's any problem with expending this money.
I agree.
Can we have some direction?
Yeah, I move that we authorize the repair expenditure for the 1995 Ford Patrol Unit in the estimation of $1,800 for a new transmission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with 1 absent. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Item 10, this is items from the city manager. Cleve?
Just quickly, a couple of items. One thing on the area code, I attended, I've attended several meetings since I spoke to you last, I believe, committee meetings with the county. There was a public meeting today in Merced. They have made some changes. There is now an alternative which keeps Stanislaus County whole. Actually, that alternative includes Stanislaus County and Merced County would be in one area. Everything else would be in another area, as it's currently drawn up. There is one other alternative a lot of the alternatives that they had before, they've now taken out. They had it down to 5 different ones today when I saw it. It's kind of a moving target, but there's one other alternative which puts Newman in with Stanislaus County also, but there's some of the rest of Stanislaus County, the Oakdale, Riverbank, Waterford area, which is left out on that alternative. So there are 2 more public meetings tomorrow, one in Sonora and one in Manteca. I'm not sure that I'm going to make it to both of those, but we have representatives from the county that is attending those and putting our position forward. I will probably at your next meeting in June, after these hearings are over and see kind of where things come out, come back to you with a resolution to adopt our position to send to the CPUC on this. It'll be in agreement with the other cities in the county with the position that we've taken on it. So that's just kind of an update of where that is at.
Cleve, one question on that. If, let's say, Stanislaus retained the 209, what's the life expectancy before did they indicate how many years we would have?
Yeah, the one that they showed today, our alternative 9A, which includes Stanislaus and Merced counties, had a 6 to 7 year life, I believe, on it, with an 11 to 12 year life on the new area code.
Thank you.
The other item I just wanted to talk about briefly is how things have been progressing with our school committee. The school has been interviewing and talking to people to do a bond survey. They've also been talking to financial advisors that would assist them with the bond. I've been trying to attend all of these meetings. I haven't made it to all of them to look at the people that they're interviewing. They have, it's my understanding, and Tom was at the meeting last night that they had. You can help me out on this. But it's my understanding they took action to select the person for the survey and the financial advisor, and they are the 2 people that actually, they are the ones that I would have selected also. I am going to get some more information, and then I will be bringing it back to you, because if this does become a joint bond, which is the direction we're kind of leaning right now, they will probably request, and would probably be our obligation to assist in the payment of the survey to look at where we're going. So they will be bringing that back. There's a possibility that I may come to the mayor and request a special meeting. We do have 3 weeks now until our next meeting, and I think that we're going to want to get going on this sooner than that, so I may come back with a special meeting to look at that and look at the program that we've got presented, and have you approve that cost to pay for the surveyor. The financial advisor, the way it was presented is that his cost will be folded into the cost of the bond, and therefore there's no cost to that right now. So that's just an update. I think the meetings are going very well. Everything has been very positive between the school and the committee. We did also look at about a week ago a drawing which shows the school site, the way they've got it drawn up, including what I had been pushing for was to develop it as one complete site, the 24 acres and the 10 acres myself, as well as the committee. The Recreation Commission and the council members on that committee had looked at that also, and the drawing, which we've seen preliminarily now, does that. It addresses the full site as one site, and with both of us using each other's facilities rather than duplicating facilities, and it makes a lot of sense. We will be on the 5th of this month, or is it the 5th? The 8th. On the 8th of this month, I have a Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, which I will take to them at that time. Is that the right date? I believe, yes, the 8th. And then on the 13th is our council meeting, and we will bring that drawing to the council. It's just a design concept right now. There's nothing set in stone, but it integrates some of the things that we've been talking about that may take place over in that area. So next meeting, hopefully we'll have that here for you to look at. I believe that's all I have. And
Also, one of the things on that we had discussed briefly, and I think we're going to have to bring back maybe to the Parks and Rec with regards to that little corner piece on that drawing.
Right.
The road that goes to
right.
Forest
We'll look
Timber.
at doing that as
Yeah.
part of that next meeting.
Okay. That'll be for the Parks and Rec to
Yes,
to look at.
they'll look at it and then bring it to the council.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Cleve. Councilmember Martina, anything tonight?
Nothing other than to notify the public that there's going to be a household hazardous waste pickup on June 2nd and 3rd from 9 to 1 p.m.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Councilmember Applegate?
Yes, I wanted to revisit RVs again and see what the consensus of the council would like to do. It seems that when I was on the planning commission, we had written up the rules and with the RV people there and everybody agreed. What's happening now is that now some of them are starting to abuse the policy that we set up, parking their fifth wheels in the street in front of their homes, pontoon boats, other boats. And then what they do, and I checked this with the chief of police, Mike, and it's not written this way, but if they move it 10 inches, then they have to start the process. They start the process all over again, saying that they use state guidelines. But in the way we wrote it up, it doesn't say anything about moving 10 inches or anything else. It just says 72 hours in front of your home, with an additional 72 if you apply. I just wondered, our legal counsel, whether or not we can redraft this to put some more teeth into it and move these things out.
We can do that. I mean, they're correct to fall back to that. I think the chief would agree that that might not have been the spirit of it, but technically, if we're going to put some teeth in it, you'd have to change it, yes.
Well, I'd like to send it back to staff and planning commission to see if we can't come up with something, because they're getting more and more out there now. And all they do is they go out, maybe drive around the block, or they just move it 10 inches.
Okay.
Sure.
We'll bring that back.
Okay.
Anything else, Tom?
No, that's all I have.
Councilmember Radford, anything tonight?
I wondered, are we still on track for a July start for the downtown project?
Your next meeting, June 13th, the plans will come back for authorization to go out to bid. So right now we're on track, unless something happens with Caltrans or somewhere else. We're looking like we're there. So
Good. So if all goes well, we'll be ready for the holiday season and, okay.
that's what we're shooting
With
for.
the new
yeah.
downtown.
Okay. That's important to our merchants.
I know.
I drove by to Target this morning on my way into Modesto, and I noticed a odor. Are they doing something out there?
They are running the sprayers. That's the only thing they're doing.
Okay.
And they do those when the wind, direction, speed, and humidity are just right.
Uh-huh.
So
It wasn't,
I
I
have
mean,
got...
it was just right in front.
Yeah.
It wasn't beyond, so.
Yeah, I've got several calls from people, not several calls, I've got 2 or 3 calls from people who have called me and said, I smelled that Target plant again. I said, well, where did you smell it? And they've all been, I smell it driving by. And I told them, please call me if you smell it in the city, but right now, what we've decided to do is allow them to run as long as it does not come into the city.
Right.
So far, I have not had any orders in the city.
Well, they have to know, everybody has to know, that until that pond is empty, there will be some smell. But however, they have said to us, there will never be smell in Newman. If there is, then they'll shut it down.
Okay.
So, but there's going to be smell until that thing's empty.
Until it's
I mean, there's
and
no
that's
two
gonna
ways
be
about
quite a
it.
while yet.
And there's no way you can get around it.
Yeah. And that's the main thing, is the fact that that pond 4, I guess it is, pond 4 needs to be completely emptied out. And that's
And that's
pretty-
what they're doing with this aeration.
Mhm.
They're
Well,
actually.
once that pond is empty, none of the ponds will ever be used again.
Right. So they won't use those. Once they empty out that pond, those spray bars won't be used, and
That's all.
that's the plan
Right.
at this point.
Good.
So,
I think at every meeting we should, just so we're updating the
Right.
public, we should
Okay.
talk a little bit about it.
all right.
Okay, good.
Anything else, Sheila?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I did, I think you'll probably mention, we all wish Councilmember
Oh.
Reed a
Mhm.
full and speedy recovery.
All right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Anything else? As Sheila mentioned, I did want to take this time to, as Sheila said, wish Councilmember Reed a speedy recovery. Hopefully he will be at our next meeting if he's feeling well. But again, we wish him, the council and the city wish him all a speedy recovery. I just had a question, Sheila asked that with regards to so the June 13th, we will have the bids ready to go out for our,
Yeah, that will be
Okay.
authorizing staff to call for bids at that meeting.
okay.
is what
And that'll
we're
be a
planning.
30-day bid process?
We'll look at that, probably, yeah.
Okay. And then, in addition to that, we're going to meet all the timelines as far as the 80% local match. Are all those timelines
The-
all?
The match from Stancog?
Right,
Sure.
right. Okay,
Mhm.
so all that is all taken care of, everything with Caltrans, with this historical and everything else? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. One of the other things that I was going to mention that's along the lines of this with the downtown is, and we talked a little bit with regard in the past with regards to, as we're looking at beginning the process on that, I'd like to see us bring back this facade program that we have, and to see how we could possibly entice more people downtown to participate in the program. Not only that, one of the other things that I'd like to see us take a look at in addition is with regard to some of these non-conforming signs is, possibly something could come back to the council with regards to going out to bid to replace some of these signs. And one of the things that I'd mentioned before with regard to the non-conforming signs, possibly to up the ante a little bit with the facade program to try and encourage some of these businesses that have these non-conforming signs to come into compliance. Also, we're going to have to look at when the sidewalks actually come up with that facade program is some of the dry rot that'll be underneath right there underneath the sidewalk, to where the city may have to look at participating with some of the businesses with regards to that. And the other thing I'd like to see us bring back, I know the staff has been looking into some of the improvements in some of these buildings these abandoned. There's a couple of the buildings downtown there that have been sent notices, and then some of the where the old Rose Hotel was with regard to that that building there that needs to come down. And so if we could just take a look at some of these things, because as we begin this downtown project, I'd like to see us get all these other small things out of the way. Also, with regards to the alley improvements, were we going to get another report back on that as far as additional costs or anything?
Yeah. To improve the alley, or were you
Right,
talking about
to improve the alleys?
Yeah, we'll look at that. We were kind of going a little further as far as getting something done, moving into the streetscape a little bit more, but we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, that and I think it's all of our concern is we just want to make sure as the downtown gets fixed up. A lot of these other areas that have been neglected for a long time are going to be even more glaring with the downtown fixed up. You'll really start to notice some of these other things. Other than that, I don't have anything. So if there's no other comments, can we move for adjournment?
I move that we adjourn.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Meeting adjourned.